Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing swell, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome everybody to the Pop Culture Squadcast Live. It is Tuesday night, so we're here, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 Pacific. We are going to be here pretty much every Tuesday night as far as we can see. And well, I got went to the eye doctor, so I can see pretty far now.
Well,
So
that's good. That
um,
was like
it,
2 days ago, 3 days ago.
it was 3 days ago. I am glassesless today. Um, Ironically,
Hi,
but not.
hi, Sherry.
I'll probably be wearing my new glasses when they come in because they're cool. But it's always fun to go to the eye doctor and get your vision checked. I was happy because it wasn't so bad, which is for somebody who's been wearing glasses for almost 40 years, 35 years, it's pretty good.
If not for eye drops, I might not ever have become such a Joe Kubert fan.
Eye drops and Joe Kubert. Okay, listen. Just so you know, folks, we do a little bit of prep for this show. We have some things we talk about occasionally, sometimes Mike's completely cold and I just throw stuff at him. But there will be something that he had wanted to get to. Eye drops and Joe Kubert was not the thing that he wanted to get to. So let's hear this.
Okay. When the first brave and bold appearance of Joe Kubert's Hawkman,
Right.
the Silver Age Hawkman came out, I was like 9 or 10 years old, and my mother was taking me to the eye doctor for my first visit. And we took the elevated train in Chicago, and there's a comic stand there at the terminal. So of course I gawked at it because I can't pass one up. I could never do that, even today. And there was this Hawkman thing, which came totally out of the blue. I hadn't seen a house ad for it or anything. It must have just come out, and I was just astonished. So I'm looking at it on the train, and it's really powerful stuff. I mean, the artwork. I I had seen Kubert's stuff before, and it made an impression, but nothing like this. So I go to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor puts these drops in my eyes, which is always a mistake because I hate eye drops. And she says, "Okay, now go out in the lobby, in the waiting room, whatever, and sit there for like an hour. We'll let these eye drops work." This is like 1959, so it took an hour to hit. And she says, "But don't read anything." Now my mother overreacted to everything, so her idea of seeing to it that I wouldn't read anything would be just to pretty much scream hysterically. And I had this Hawkman, and I really wanted to get back to it, and I really wanted to look at it. Even the pages I already read, I want to read this. So I'm sort of sneaking looks, and my mother is screaming, and we go back and forth on this for an hour. And then finally, the eye doctor sees me, and we go through the exam, and 2 weeks later, I get my glasses because in those days it took 2 weeks to get glasses, and I walked out of there being a huge Joe Kubert Hawkman fan, not knowing about the Golden Age stuff at that time. And Kubert has wound up my favorite artist ever since. Joe knew that. I happened to mention that to him. And he says, "Geez, I wonder what I looked at during my eye exam." Oh,
Is that the one?
that's it. That's it. That cover still brings me to a stop every time. It is such a meaningful experience in my life. It's one of those moments where, like, forever you're going to be a comic book fan, and that was it. I'll tell you, when they replaced that train station with a modern one, I was pissed. Not only because the old one was beautiful by an architect named Arthur Gerber, I really liked that stuff, but also because they didn't have comic books in the new terminal.
Oh well, that's terrible.
Oh yeah, we moved.
Well, you want to know what's funny? All right, it's such a weird thing. We have this weird thing in this world that we live in where there's value on things that doesn't make sense. Like it's not, and value is definitely in the eye of the beholder. That book, and I'm just looking at a site that I go to. It's a well respected, back issue site. That book, you know, for CGC is about $305.
Mm-hmm.
It's at a 4.5, so it's okay, right? There's a really really high quality one which is like a 7.5, and that's really high value. But basically, you can get a pretty good copy of it for $305. Do you know what you can't get a pretty good copy of for $305?
What?
Vampire Tales #2.
Morbius or what?
No, first appearance of Satana.
Oh, people care that much, huh?
Apparently,
Who drew
it,
that?
it,
It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to look it up. It's all right.
It is. I don't know, but it is. I would like it. I'm just not going to pay that much money for it. You can get like you can get a copy with like a slit down half of it for like
Yeah.
$300.
Oh, that's silly.
So
they are. I think aren't they slowly beginning to reprint their black and white magazines?
oh, there's been a reprinted copy of it, but it's in a digest kind of form, like
Oh yeah, no,
similar to that thing that you have at your desk. Like that size thing. Yes, the Superboy.
That's how thick it is. Look at this.
That's very thick, and we have on that book a very good boy.
We do. The summer of crypto. I'm telling you, this is, and if our president screws up any more than he already has, which he will, then we're going to have to define which crypto we're talking about.
Listen,
I'm talking about the real crypto,
only with a K.
That's right.
There's a trailer coming out tomorrow, so folks, if you are watching the interwebs, there is a Superman trailer coming out tomorrow. If you like those things, I did see a trailer today for the new Peacemaker. Did you see that?
No, I saw that, and I saw the Spider-Man Noir.
Oh, I haven't seen the trailer for that, but
it's sort of a teaser trailer, and
sure.
Since I am the loudest guy bitching about all of these different incarnations of every character in the world, how many Supermen are there? How many Spider-Men are there? Enough to fill Yankee Stadium. But I'm looking forward to this one because I loved the brief appearance in the animated movie. I love the character. And the guy who's voicing the character or playing the character, I guess now, deserves the part. So I'm fine with it.
Good. I thought the trailer for Peacemaker was very interesting. We are now in James Gunn's DCU with that, which I think it comes out after Superman, so we will have seen those characters in Superman. But that looks a lot of fun. So that's happening.
We will also we've also seen one of those characters in Creature Commandos, which was really the DCU thing. So
if you haven't seen that is I think required watch. It's super fun, and it definitely sets a tone.
I haven't finished seeing it. Actually,
well, I think to be honest, I think I have to watch the last episode.
I think for some reason it just fades from my memory. I keep on meaning to, but
no, sure. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. One, a couple of weeks ago, about maybe almost a month ago, we had the folks from Ignition Press on, and the Murder Podcast Cold Open ends tomorrow or the next day, and it's already funded. And if you haven't backed it yet, please consider it, because we're big fans of that. And I'm going to post the link to it in the comments, so you still have time to get in on that that Cold Open thing. Also, last week our guest was Tiffany Babb, and they are funded and on the Kickstarter for the Comics Courier. I'm going to put that in the links as well, so go ahead and go in the comments and get that link there if you haven't backed that. But what I wanted to tell you, because we didn't talk about it, I want to come back to it, Mike. I know we have to get you a copy of it still, but there's some really, really good journalism in there. And one of the things in there is an essay by Hassan Otsman-Elhaou, who, if you don't know who that is, Hassan Otsman-Elhaou is one of the top 2 letterers in the business today, but by far. There's 2 guys at the top. He is one of them. I don't know which one is number 1. He's also one of the main people behind Panel by Panel, which is where Tiffany worked as well. And it's an essay about essentially it's about Strange Tales 151, 152, and 153, somewhere in that range, where Jack Kirby did the layouts and Jim Steranko did the finishes.
Mm-hmm.
And it just talks about how you can see where Kirby was trying to do Kirby things, and then when it switches, you'd see, because then Steranko did the whole thing, and you can see where it's one of the great examples of where you can see how 2 styles meshed together or tried to, and then how they separated. It's really good, and if you haven't gotten a hold of these, please try and find a way to. But this is like a 3-page essay, and just really goes into all kinds of detail. So, what do you think?
I'll have to read that. First of all, Tiffany really impressed the hell out of me last week, and I don't just say that because I'm being polite, and she did our show, and that she did us a solid. I knew about her, never met her, and I knew about her publication, but I hadn't read it. And that happens, there's a lot of stuff going on in this medium now. So the more we were talking, the more I got sucked into her persona, her mission, her life goals. I was just absolutely fascinated. That was so much fun. However, you want me to talk about Jim Steranko.
Do you want to talk about Jim Steranko? I met Jim Steranko once.
Once? Was he wearing a white suit?
I don't know, but he poked me in the chest.
Oh, yeah, he'd do that. I've known Jim for a long time. In the 70s, we almost worked together. Actually, there were a lot of almost work-togethers there. I came up with this scheme where he would draw a dozen Batman covers, and then Julie Schwartz, who's the editor of Batman at the time, would have stories written around his covers. And Julie liked it, Jim liked it, everybody liked it, but they couldn't come to an agreement on terms, which was not just money, but deadlines and that sort of stuff. So it fell through, and I'm disappointed because seeing Jim start up a Batman story, let alone a dozen, would have been an interesting experience.
Sure.
Nobody.
That would have been fantastic.
Yeah, it really would have. Nobody in this medium has ever made so much in terms of reputation and impact for so little output as Jim Steranko. Mid-60s to mid-70s pretty much, and that was it. Some covers here and there, and some very nice covers here and there. And he's done publications and all this other stuff, and it's great work. politically, Jim and I are sort of on opposite sides of the universe.
Well, yeah,
But we don't. But we don't talk about that very much, and we don't have to. There's so much else to talk about. I know it's hard to believe that you could actually get me in a room and have me not talk about politics at all.
right.
But
It's happened.
there is. Yeah, you've seen it once or twice. There is a philosophy called "Don't start." Don't start. And sometimes, you got to look for the greater goal and leave the little stuff that you really want to put in. You got to keep that out. It's an adaptation of Agatha Christie's "Murder Your Darlings" concept.
Did she? I didn't realize she was the one who said that.
I believe so. I could be mistaken because I often am.
So I'm not going to tell my personal Jim Steranko story, but I do have an interesting Jim Steranko story that I overheard. It was told.
That's not the reason why I mentioned Jim, though. I just want to set that up.
All right. So one of the things about him that I think is interesting is that he is in a large way responsible for David Mack. In that David Mack found his phone number in the phone book and called him and established a mentorship by just sending him stuff and calling late at night and talking about what he was doing and how he was approaching things. And that would never happen today, obviously, but in certain ways it does, like with social media and becoming acquainted with people that way. But it was literally found a phone book, found Steranko, called the number and said, "Hey, I'm a kid trying to become an artist. Can you help me?"
There are a few stories like that with various people, and I'm always charmed by that because the decision for the talent is arbitrary. You always want to help people, but you never have enough time. If you're at a convention, it's insane. So I respect and admire that. It takes an enormous amount of follow through on the younger person's part to establish that and keep it going, which to me proves that they mean it, that they really want it, and that's great. That sense of commitment is what you have to have first.
Absolutely. Did you have something?
Speaking of Jim Steranko,
Mr. Steranko, go ahead. What did you want to say?
His artwork, what little there is of it, his storytelling, his writing, speaks for itself, screams for itself. But he will also go down in history, or has gone down in history, because Jim's actually older than me, for his 2-volume, history of comics tabloid books. That was supposed to be like the Steranko history of comics. It was supposed to be like a 10-volume set, but they got the first 2 out. I think the third one was written, although I'm not sure. And it was great when it came out. First one came out in 1969. Turned me on to all these pulp heroes. Made me a Spider fan, not Spider-Man. Spider fan, as in the pulp character. His artwork was stunning. He got all of his buddies. Bill Everett did a wonderful Submariner piece, all kinds of stuff, and I just love those 2 books, as did all of my peers who had no life other than comics. And I just heard, and I don't have a confirmation, and I hope this isn't like a stunt that somebody's doing, but I heard that he's doing that 3rd volume, which means updating it and rewriting it and polishing it and laying it out and stuff. God, I hope that's true. Nothing would make me happier, at least among those things that Jim and I agree about.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's that. I am also hopeful that it's not a stunt and that it happens, and that he's able to, fulfill that. That'd be fantastic.
I want Jim to have an impact, a brand new impact on this current generation of comics fans and professionals. Again, his artwork speaks for itself, but the older that it is, the more you have to go and find it.
Sure, absolutely.
It doesn't come to you. So I'm very excited about this vague possibility that third volume is coming, and when it does, we gotta get him on this show.
Oh, that'd be cool. We'll see. We'll look into that if that's the case. Yes, absolutely. I got one more story I want to talk about before we bring our guest in. He is in the green room, so we're gonna get to Rob Venditti real soon. You brought this to my attention. Robert Benton, Oscar-winning director and screenwriter, primarily screenwriter, passed away at 92. But he is one of the people who wrote Superman. His first thing was Bonnie and Clyde, which he put around for a bunch of years. He won 3 Oscars, I think. Kramer versus Kramer, obviously his probably most celebrated work because he wrote and directed that.
Right.
I remember being a young kid seeing that. People with their ads, seeing that movie, and it's still, it probably couldn't get made today. It probably wouldn't get made today the way it was, but I think it's still an important piece of cinematic history.
It's a wonderful movie. It's an important movie. It has stunning performances, and you give the director some credit for that too. But in terms of you folks out there in the ether, he was one of the guys who did the first Superman movie.
Yep.
We all
did you meet him? Was he around the set?
He was no, because I was only on the New York and some of the Canada sets.
Okay,
but so I didn't meet him. I did meet whichever of the Mankowitzes was involved, and I spent a lot of time with Donner and Christopher Reeve. So I had a great time on that movie. It would have been so cool to meet Ben, because I admire his work, and starting with Bonnie and Clyde, which is it's also a phenomenal movie with an unbelievable cast.
Absolutely.
So I'm saddened by that. And then again, I didn't meet Marlon Brando either. Although Sal Harrison made a joke about him trying to arrange that.
Listen, sometimes you don't need to meet everybody. That one, I would be fine.
I can't say I've met everybody, but I've met a lot of folks, and there is a cumulative aspect to it, because if you do that, I started out very young. I started out when I was 18, meeting big celebrities and stuff, and then I had the whole radio career and all that. So you get used to the fact that most of them really are humans. And the ones who are not humans are assholes, and you have to be prepared to burst that balloon.
Well, from what I've seen about what Chris Reeve said, Marlon falls into that second category.
You see, there's a third category that I think Marlon belongs to, which is people who were not born on this planet and don't quite understand how we work on this planet. And that's okay, because maybe they have some good ideas. So I'm fine. I'm fine with that. We need to look at new stuff.
Right.
But the fact that he could speak English and carry on conversations with people, it kind of surprised me. It's like, wow, that's interesting.
Right. So we have run through topic after topic in our opening segment tonight, and we have a guest we're waiting to talk to, who has a new book coming out shortly. he is he's a great person, friend of ours, and I just am excited to bring into the show Rob Venditti for the first time. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing swell, Robert. It's awfully great to see you.
You as well. By the end of this, you can tell me if I am an asshole or if I'm not of this planet.
Well, there's the human part. There was the first, first one. You're definitely in that first category.
I was ruling myself out.
You could be both an asshole and from another planet.
Okay. It's not an either or. Okay.
Don't hold back. Do you like how we started with I started, with Hawkman tonight?
Yes, obviously.
Yeah, we did. There was, I think, I don't know if you were in the green room yet, but there was a whole thing about just Hubert's first Hawkman and Brave and the Bold. So that went into.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was. It might have been 2021, I guess, when I was at Baltimore and I was on a panel, and Bob, you moderated the panel, and you were on the panel. Yeah,
I have it would be a picture of this right here.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that!
See, this was us.
Who are those other reprobates?
Yeah, we have Jack Harris and Jerry Ordway. Yeah, it was great. That was a lot of fun. We're gonna get to some stuff, but I just gotta say this for people who don't know out there. In the next 6 months or so, your bookshelves will be stressed by the fact that there are 2 omnibuy coming that are Green Lantern by Rob Venditti. 2
I know
omnibuy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. That's the first omnibus that I've had. I've had deluxe hardcovers and things like that, but this is the first omnibus. And even though the New 52, I'm trying to remember, I think was only 34 issues of Green Lantern, because I started with issue 20.
Yep.
And then it went to
50. And then there were some extra others in there.
Yeah, there was the Villains Month issue and the Future's End issue. So and some annuals. So 37 issues. But it became 2 volumes because we did so many crossovers during that time that like a huge chunk of Green Lantern Corps is in there too, which I co-wrote for some of the time with Van Jensen, and then most of the time he wrote it on his own. And there were so many storylines that editorial had us doing together that it became 2 big giant omnibuses. So I can't take credit for everything in there, but yeah.
No, it's great. I want to let's get the good, the business of the day out of the way first, and I want to talk. And I don't mean it in that way, but let's talk very much about.
Can I set this one up instead?
Okay, go ahead.
Please just plug the hell out of your new project.
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about some bad ideas, but this one is coming. The issue 0 is out. I've read it. Issue 1 comes out in July. Is that right? I think
July 9. Yeah.
July 9th. Planet Death, which you are co-writing with
Derek Kolstad. He's the screenwriter and creator of the John Wick franchise of films.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
The John Wick character is actually named after his grandfather. His grandfather's name was John Wick. And so this is Derek's first time being in comics, but he's somebody who read comics when he was younger, big fan of comics, and so it was an opportunity for me to work with him, which was great. And so we co-wrote the whole project together. Like you say, the 0 issue is already out. It'll be four issues total. I want to say the first 3 are 40 pages. I want to say the fourth one is 53. So they're all oversized issues. Ton of story. Tomas Giarello on art, penciling and inking himself for the first time in a really long time. And you can see some of the black and white there.
Yeah.
It's just gorgeous looking stuff. And so the response to it so far has been really good. We're super, super happy about it. It's something we've been working on. Gosh, I think I started writing it in like June of 23, maybe, you know? So,
Yeah.
The artwork is in black and white.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I think black and white art is wonderful. Some people do. Some retailers do.
Yeah, well, that cover you're looking at is in black and white. You just don't have the colored version. The 0 issue that came out is colored by Dave Stewart. So
I understand. I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah.
No, guys, it's okay. It's in color. You can order.
This is the
I
the
love
promotional
black and
image
white.
that they have out there for the A cover. There are colored issues for B and C covers as well.
I think they just might have released the colored cover today.
Well, they didn't tell me that.
Of that version, like literally a couple hours ago. They don't tell me either. I just see it on social. You know what I mean?
Who's the publisher?
Bad Idea.
So I want to talk about Bad Idea, because you've been working with them since they had their Bad Idea.
Yeah.
Or it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Dinesh is one of the co-founders of this. You and Josh Dysart essentially have been the two writing forces throughout it.
Matt Kint as well, I would put.
And Matt Kint, yes.
Yeah, Matt's written a lot of titles for them for sure.
True. Obviously they keep hiring you, but which is not a hard thing to do. But like, what is it about this? I mean, you've known Dinesh for a really long time. Yeah. He was at Valiant when you started working at Valiant, or at least you cross over in that time. What is it about Bad Idea that you enjoy?
Yeah, so X-Men of War, when I wrote for Valiant, this would have been 2012. That was the first mainstream comic book that I'd ever done. I'd done a couple of creator-owned small things for Top Shelf prior to that. I had adapted the Percy Jackson novels into graphic novels, but X-Men of War was the first time I had done sort of a mainstream shared universe, serialized monthly comic book, and all that kind of stuff. And that was Dinesh back then. It was Dinesh, and Warren Simons was my editor. Hunter Goranson was there. Josh Johns was there. Adam Freeman was there. These were all the people that got together and started Bad Idea as well. And so when they were starting up Bad Idea, Valiant had sold, and they weren't at Valiant anymore. And I had stopped writing for Valiant even prior to that, because I was under exclusive at DC and I was doing Green Lantern and Hawkman and those things. But when they went to launch Bad Idea, they reached out to me, kind of told me what they had in mind. And I loved the sound of it. I loved, and I know some people don't always love some of the antics they do and things, but I loved, the non-traditional way that they were going to launch the company, because you see so many comic book companies kind of launch and sort of a step-by-step process that a lot of them follow. And I love that they were going to do something different there. And I also was really interested in the idea of being able to write a lot of different stories in a lot of different genres that I wouldn't be able to write necessarily in other companies,
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
The tone of the books that I do for them are all extremely different, and this year I'll have 3 series coming out from them.
Yeah.
One is Planet Death. Yeah. One is Planet Death, which is, very sort of sci-fi war story. I'm doing a book called Survive, which is an espionage story set aboard a sunken submarine. Then I'm doing a series called Ordained, which is
Ordained. I think is the one I'm most interested in, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, I'd say the concept now if you want, or we can come back to it later, whatever you want.
No, you can tell me now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Ordained is a story about a priest who gets called into a hospital to give last rites to a dying patient. Doesn't know who the patient is. When he goes into the room, the patient starts confessing. The patient is an aging Irish gangster who's on his deathbed. So the Irish gangster tells him all the things he's done in his life, and repents, and the priest performs last rites, absolves him of his sins, and leaves. Well, the gangster ends up making a miraculous recovery, not dying, and so now he's got to kill the priest because the priest knows about everything that he did in his life. But it turns out the priest wasn't always a priest. He used to be a Navy SEAL who found his faith in combat, and so now the Irish mob is coming after him, and he's got to figure out a way to get himself out of the scenario, not keep any collateral damage from hurting anyone else, and not break his vow that he swore he would never kill again. So
yeah, that's a tough situation. I really like the premise, but I like the cover even more.
yeah, that's Jorge Fornes there, which is obviously amazing to be able to have covers from him. So super happy with it. Trevor Hairsine is the artist. He's drawing it right now. It's going to be 4 issues as well, and they're also all oversized. Each one's between 32 and 40 pages, which is another thing I really like about Bad Idea. You know, they don't say this has to be 20 pages, this has to be 22, or whatever. It's whatever serves the story best. And so it's nice to have that kind of creative freedom. There's a lot of different ways. And Mike, you were an editor a really long time, and so it's like there's different kinds of creativity, and so the box of constraints that's put on you when you work at Marvel or DC or something like that in terms of page length and shared universe, all these things, I don't see that as a negative. Like there's a lot of things you think of creatively that you would not have thought of if you weren't put in a box to begin with. Constraints breed creativity. But Bad Idea is a different form of creativity where it's more open-ended and you can kind of be a little more free with stuff.
I mean, go ahead, Mike.
The wandering page count is something that we've been headed towards slowly but surely.
The which page count?
Wandering page count?
Yeah.
Wandering, yeah. It's not like we have a 22-page story, and next month we will have a 22-page story. And the month after that, well, not all stories are exactly the same length, even if they're continued stories. Yeah. The cool thing that we're seeing about streaming, television shows, is that they can be 47 minutes or 52 minutes or 61 minutes.
Or 6
they can be
8 episodes.
Right, exactly.
Or 38 minutes, like you'll watch a show and one episode's 49 minutes, the next one's 38,
Yeah. It's hard to plan out your life, but it's streaming, folks. Get over it. And I'm glad to see that we're doing that. We're beginning to be able to do that in comics now for the reason I just mentioned. Not all stories should be told in exactly the same length segments.
Yeah. I don't know. At DC, when I was there, it was always either 20 or 22. They would kind of go back and forth sometimes. And if it was an annual, it was, 38, I believe, 38. And that's because they were printing a 32-page comic. And so they got to have a certain number of ads and back matter and things like that. Like I say, I never found those things to be stifling. A lot of times you come up with ideas and creative ways to work inside the box, like I say, that you wouldn't have thought of before. But getting back to Bad Idea, it was an opportunity to do that other kind of creativity that doesn't really adhere to that, and so you can do things that are more freeing, not just in terms of page count, but I mean, I've done 8-page stories for them all the way up to 50-page stories for them. So not just in terms of page count, but also, like I say, genre.
Right. That's great. Also, it tells you immediately, hey, the publisher is interested in telling stories. They're committed to stories, not to format.
Yeah, that's kind of their motto: is story first, whatever serves story. They really dig in, on scripts, and if the script isn't ready, they'll tell you. I don't know why we keep getting that flare in the background. I don't know what I'm doing to cause that, but
sometimes Mike gets little emojis that pop up on his face.
I'm just glowing. So I mean, like you say, whatever serves story, and it's nice to be able to do that kind of stuff.
I mean, there's for people who aren't familiar with, I know anybody who's watching this who is a Bad Idea fan. I don't know. Do they have? I don't know if they have a name, but they are a strong fan base. People who are
Mm.
who do this. One of the things, to be that kind of started out with them. They were direct to comic shops, no trade paperbacks, no digital. Which, to be honest with you, for me, my comic shop was not a participatory shop, so I couldn't get these books
Yeah.
unless I had to travel someplace else. They've since, I think they've announced a distribution with Lunar, so these books that you're working on will be in every comic shop, and there'll be things like that. But there's a rabid fan base. I was at the panel in New York this past year, and like there were like 5 questions. They were all about pizza parties and stuff like that, and who wins this, and nobody was asking. It was a little crazy.
Yeah.
How do you find that? Like you're interacting with folks, and you go to Bad Idea booths and stuff like that.
Yeah, when they started, it was very non-traditional,
Mhm.
and that was kind of built into it. Like I say, I actually like that idea because sometimes you got to try to do different things. I think there was 300 stores worldwide that you were able to get their books, but some of them were like Midtown Comics or DCBS or whatever, where you can get them anywhere in the world if you want to do mail order. Um, they've expanded that now. So with Planet Death, that's the launch of their new slate. They haven't really published a lot since fall of 2023. They kind of took 2024 off, and I think a lot of people thought maybe they were going away, but we were all building content in the background. The slate of books that I've written is just one part of what they're doing. They've got new books from Josh Dysart and
Mhm.
Mike Carey. I'm trying to be careful and not
Yeah.
announce any that haven't been announced yet.
Yeah, no, there was a bunch. You good. Mike Carey was announced. There's a new Matt Camp book too. You're right.
Yeah,
Mike Carey is a favorite of mine for sure.
yeah, and it's a wonderful book. Jonathan Wayshak is the artist on it. It's called Cul-de-sac. Looks amazing. I believe that launches in August, and so now they're having a more of a traditional thing about it. They've put a lot of books out. People have seen what they do in terms of content, and they did do a lot of antics and things, and to me, a lot of stuff that was fun. But my feeling was always those things only work if the stories are good. If they're putting out books that
Right.
aren't good, then people they're gonna sour on it very quickly. But the books are good, and so I'm not just saying that because I write some of them. the ones that I don't write are better than the ones I write. The books are good, and so but now it's more traditional. Like you say, starting with Planet Death, they'll be in Lunar. There'll be any retailer that wants to order them can order them. I can't remember what the number is, but I think it's 900,000 copies of Planet Death Zero that went out all around the world, and so there's a lot of excitement about what we've got coming up, and they haven't even announced everything yet. So looking forward to having all this stuff we've been building in the background finally out there.
Do you know why they've decided to eschew digital?
I don't. Yeah, I know they're starting to do trades now. And Planet Death #1 comes out July 9th. I don't know if it's the same day, but sometime in July also is a trade paperback collection of the Hero Trade, which was the first story that they did by Matt Kent and David Lapham when they launched the company. So they are starting to do trades. I can't answer the digital question. I'm not sure. I'm not involved in the business side of stuff.
Right, I understand.
It's never really anything that I don't read digital comics. And I'm not against them. But for me, I spend my whole day on a screen working. That when I want to read a comic book, I just want to hold it in my hand. I don't want to look at a screen no more.
I read most of my comics on the largest iPad they make.
Yeah.
And the reason why I do that is because I'm old and my eyeballs are rotting before your very eyes. So I need that, and the luminosity, behind the luminescence behind the art can be beautiful if you adjust it right. The color work is stunning. So I'm a fan of digital, but I'm also a fan of our getting to the future.
Mhm.
And our future is not a future that involves a lot of paper because we need the water.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
need
I don't know. I mean,
we need the air.
yeah, I don't know. I think that
I think it had to, I think, to be honest with you, I don't know the answer, but if I had to hazard a guess, it had a lot to do with supporting comic shops.
Right.
And because of the way that, that was a big part of their push to, direct to comic shops, who were part of it, and they're not going to compete with comic shops by going digital. And I anticipate
I understand that.
that'll change. I anticipate at some point it will.
Just look at your paper bills every month.
Oh yeah,
sooner or later it's going to change. I mean, it's like gravity.
I don't know. I mean, I do agree with you that eventually, but it's interesting because like I feel like when I first started working at a lot of DC, this would have been probably like around 2014. Like digital was going to be the end of print. Digital, there weren't going to be comics anymore. It was all going to be digital, and books and things like that. Kindle and the Amazon. Well, Amazon's Kindle and Barnes and Noble have what they have.
Comixology and
What did Barnes and Noble have? The
Nook.
The Nook, yeah.
You
But
can
it's
see us.
going back now, and now brick and mortar bookstores and Barnes and Noble specifically are doing a lot better. And print is one of the few things that sort of didn't take a dip when a lot of other recessionary things did. And so it's interesting. There's something about just having a book in your hands, maybe. I don't know.
For the last 10 or 15 years, the smarter comic book store operators, owners, have made major investments in the trade paperbacks and the hardcovers, and they've been selling them there. The bookstores, the traditional bookstores, particularly Barnes and Noble. Well, I mean, they sell a lot of manga, but the fact of the matter is, we're selling a lot of comic books, and we're getting a lot of readers who we didn't have before, or who don't live near a comic book shop or what have you. So print is not going away. Eventually it will because it's paper, but it's not so soon. It'll be around for a lot longer than the 32-page pamphlets.
Yeah.
Those have a clock ticking. That clock has been ticking loudly for a very long time. It's ticking louder now.
Well, that's why I do 40-page pamphlets, because clearly I'm getting ahead of that. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about your origins. And I read somewhere that that there was a particular comic that turned you on to the idea that you could write comics.
Yeah. I didn't read comic books growing up at all. I don't know why that is. I had an older brother that did. I would see them at the grocery store and the barber shop and things like that, but I never read them. I didn't start reading them until I was in my late 20s. I was in grad school, and there was a friend of mine. I was working at a Borders bookstore, and a guy that I worked there with was a big comic book guy, and he was always talking to me about comics, and none of them ever really, didn't really want to read them. And it was also, there seemed like a big barrier to entry, like there's a billion Spider-Man stories and Superman stories and whatever. Where do I start, But he told me about this book called Astro City, specifically this arc called Confession, which I've never thought about this till just now, but it's also about a priest.
Yeah. You didn't think about that until just now. That's one of my favorite arcs too.
Yeah, it sounded really interesting to me. And so at the time I was in school for creative writing, and I went to a shop and found that arc and read it, and I really liked it, and here was a story that this sounds very, stupid to say, but, being in creative writing class and, getting my master's and all these kinds of things, you're reading Hemingway and whatever, you keep in mind, this is like late 90s, early 2000s. Comics weren't on people's radar really, right? There wasn't a New York Times bestseller list. It wasn't something that was taught in classrooms outside of maybe outliers like Mouse and things like that. And so I just thought comics were for kids, and so I read Astro City, and here was something that was extremely character focused and literary and all its presentations and everything. And themes and all that kind of stuff. And so I went and read the rest of Astro City, which I think there was only, I don't know, maybe like 27 issues then at that point, 23 or something like that.
Yeah.
And read them all, as singles. Went shop to shop to shop to try to find them all and everything. Read the whole run, loved it, and then just started looking for other stuff. And so I go into the comic book shop, and there's no more Astro City anymore that I can get. And like I say, it's Superman number 9,072,000 and Spider-Man number 6,000,000,000 and whatever. And it's like, where do I start? And there was this company that had just started called America's Best Comics. I had no idea what it was, didn't know anything about any of it, who the writer was, nothing. But they had this story called Tom Strong, and the cover was an Alex Ross cover. And Alex Ross had done all the covers of Astro City. So I saw that art, and I was like, oh, that's the same guy. I was like, what is this? And I picked it up and I read it. I was like, this Alan Moore guy's pretty good. What else has he done? And so, that was like my intro into comics, was just accidentally falling into, Kurt Busiek and Alan Moore and Frank Miller and things. And so I tell people that story a lot, and they're like, what a wonderful way to like be able to discover comics,
I agree.
Yeah. And so
I agree. My point, if you're going to jump in the deep end.
Yeah,
that's great. That's absolutely great. I think we have COVID to thank for all that, because people were stuck at home and they had nothing to do, and like television and everything else, people started to read more, or perhaps for the first time. I really don't know. And after that, you start seeing things like, Barnes and Nobles, who's just finished closing a trillion stores, are now opening up new stores, slightly smaller, totally different than what was before, because we don't buy DVDs and CDs anymore.
Well, crazily enough, they've got a little CD section and DVD section now. Like, I went in there the other day, and we've got one of those small footprint stores, not small, but smaller footprint stores. And sure enough, they've got a whole bay of DVDs.
No kidding.
CDs. And like, because I went in there with my son, and he was like, let's go to Barnes & Noble. I want to get a CD. My son has a CD player. And I was like, are you kidding me? And yeah, he went in there and bought an Elliott Smith CD at a Barnes & Noble. And when I started working, when I was at Borders, I ran the music department. I didn't run the music department. I worked in the music department. I wasn't the music manager. And so at that point, Borders was the largest music retailer in the world,
Yeah. I liked Borders a lot.
Yeah, I preferred it. Yeah.
There's an interesting thing with physical media. Like, there is we're well deep into the the vinyl revival, right? And everybody, all these 20-year-olds are like, oh, I need to get the vinyl of this or the record of that.
Yeah.
There is a there is the 40th anniversary of Tears for Fears album that is coming out on cassette.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I read about that. Yeah. I don't know about that.
Well, so my son is a musician. He's in high school. He's a musician. He plays bass guitar. They've got their own band and everything. And he says that he can tell the difference between like a CD and like Spotify. And he can tell the difference. Like he said, a cassette sounds better than a CD, and a record sounds better than a cassette because of what goes into it, and how it's made. And I guess the more low tech it is, the better the actual sound is to somebody who's a musician, So he listens to everything on CD, and he listens to all the stuff that I listen to. Like, his whole music collection is like 90s grunge rock and earlier, like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin up to like Alice in Chains and stuff like that, and just nothing really much after that too much, So Oasis, some things like that. But so yeah, it's interesting. There are a lot of kids that are, and I'm starting to see UCD stores pop up more around where I live. So it's interesting. Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of vinyl. I mean, I used to have very good hearing, which is sad because now I'm deaf. But back in the day, vinyl was fine. CDs, digital music was better for many types of music. The more complicated music, the more layered the music. But when you're talking about like, garage bands, when you're talking about grunge,
Yeah.
I think vinyl has that wonderful cheapness to it that a lot of like old monster movies, old movies in general, seem to have.
Yeah.
So I don't dismiss any of that. I use digital almost always because I'm always listening to music and I'm never in one place.
Yeah. Yeah, they are cumbersome for sure. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I have a lot of comic books here. We have one piece of physical music media in this house because we just got rid of. I mean, we got rid of it, and I didn't have any. The only thing, it's weird because there's certain things like even today, like you can't, like it's just not available digital. There's certain things that you can't get digitally.
Sure. Yeah.
So the one thing I have which is not available digitally is the CD of the Two Rooms album, which is a tribute album to Bernie Taupin and Elton John by other covers of their songs by other people, but it's not available digitally. So I had to get it.
Yeah.
Is it weird? It's weird, like weird things.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. Like I've got a buddy who collects VHS because there's so many movies that were never put on digital. That era of when they were just pumping all this stuff to feed cable TV and whatnot, and there's all these things that exist only in VHS. And he's got thousands of them, thousands of them. And
there's a movie called Get Crazy. It's about the sort of middle period of rock and roll. Yeah. It's a brilliant movie. It's a hilarious movie. The music is terrific. Malcolm McDowell plays Mick Jagger until he drops acid and then hires his penis as their manager. It's really a strange movie. And
awesome.
And Martha Thomas and John Ostrander and I, for a long, long time, were the only people on Earth who had ever heard of this movie. And the only way you could get a copy, you couldn't even get it. It was hard to get on VHS. I got one on a Japanese laser disc.
Oh, wow.
And I was thrilled because this movie, I'm a big rock fan, but I'm a big music fan. But this movie was wonderful in every regard. IMDb it if you've never heard of the movie and just check out the cast.
Yeah, what is it called again?
Yeah.
Get Crazy. It's not a great name, but it is kind of appropriate.
I like a lot of those VHS era, made for cable movies. Like I enjoy them creatively, and I know that sounds strange because so many of them are bad movies. But the reason why I like them is and I'm sure it's similar for you all, but as someone who writes and just thinks about story all the time, it's very hard for me to watch a movie or a TV show and not know what's going to happen. You can see the beats.
That's right.
You can see the beats. But in those bad movies, they make creative choices that I promise you did not see coming, and so they're genuinely surprising. Like I've never seen this Get Crazy movie, but I guarantee if I was watching it, I wouldn't say, I bet he makes his penis be his manager. You know what I'm saying? It would never come to me that was going to happen. And so
I think that's true. By the way, his drummer was John Densmore from The Doors.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And Densmore comes in to the room after McDowell makes this arrangement with his penis, and he introduces their new manager to John Densmore, and he says, "Yeah, that's great. Just don't expect me to shake hands with him." Great movie.
Yeah. So I mean, creatively, they're surprising to me, and I enjoy being able to still be surprised by something.
Absolutely. Hey kids, we tell you every week, here's some cool ways to get into the comics business and to storytelling. Let me give you a really cool reason not to, because the more you get into storytelling, the harder it is for you to make it through a movie or a television show without second guessing everything. And I know people who, until recently, wouldn't want to watch a TV show with me because
Mhm.
even I would just make ticking noises or something when
Yeah.
you know.
I find myself doing that more and more and more and more. You know.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
to. I've ruined quite a few things for my wife to the point where I have to like. I just have to stop. You know, like I have to be conscious of like, don't ruin it. You know.
That's right. It's you have to be polite.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have I have a question I wanted to ask you. So you are a comic book writer, whether
Mhm.
you set out to be that or not, you are.
Mhm.
Um,
So
among
there.
other things.
Who would
But
choose this?
you know, how did you when you began doing this, how did you approach or how do you approach writing comic scripts differently than you did when you were writing prose or when you read
Yeah, so I started out as a prose writer and I published, I published my first short story that I submitted as I was, going through the thesis of my master's in creative writing. The first story that I submitted got published in between or got accepted. In between it getting accepted and printed, I started reading comics and I never went back to writing short stories again. So,
Hmm.
um, but it was a lot different. And again, this is early 2000s where there weren't really resources, to figure out how to write comics,
Mhm.
That's true.
like there are now, and now colleges have sequential art programs and you can get, the guide to writing comics for dummies or whatever, at the bookstore. None of that stuff really existed. And so um, there was a book that Nat Gertler had put together called Panel One. There was a collection of scripts and like by different writers. Kurt Busiek had one of the scripts in there. So it just kind of showed you that kind of stuff. Later on, there was a book called by Denny O'Neil called The DC Comics Guide to Writing Comics.
Oh yeah.
And he talked a lot about not necessarily format and things, but the medium, and there was Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. So I read resources like that and tried to wrap my head around it. But when it came time to actually scripting, I kind of just wrote in a vacuum and did what felt right. And at the time, I had volunteered to pack boxes in the warehouse at Top Shelf, which is a well-known publishing imprint, but at the time was very small and they were just local to where I lived in Atlanta. And so I asked them if I could work for them, and they ended up hiring me, and I became an employee. And while I was their warehouse guy, I wrote the script for my first story called The Surrogates.
Yeah,
Blind.
and then it became a movie
Yeah, I know.
with Bruce Willis.
Crazy.
That was wait, whoa. Now I know about that because Bob gave me the details I didn't know, and I went, "Oh yeah, geez, you're kidding, that happened." But your very first script became a movie.
Yeah, and I was just
Have
like,
you ever seen a Roadrunner cartoon?
of course, yes.
Don't look down.
I didn't even know any artists, so I wrote it sort of like I say in a vacuum. I didn't know any writers, but I gave it to the editor and the owner of Top Shelf, Chris Staros. He's still the editor now, but it's an imprint of IDW.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, man, I know this isn't what you normally publish, but if you could read it and tell me what you think, and if you think it's good, maybe you can introduce me to another publisher that might be interested if you think there are any. And he said, actually, we like it. We'd like to publish it ourselves. We've never done like sort of a mainstream kind of genre story like this, and we'd like to do it. And I was like, okay, cool. And so they published it, and just a series of very, very fortunate circumstances that you don't really have any control over. It ended up getting made into a movie, and that was really kind of how my career got started. But yeah, that was the very first thing I ever wrote. Yeah. Very first comic I wrote. Yeah.
It didn't occur to me. I knew it was one of your first, but your very first.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty wild.
How so again, there are omnibuy of stuff you've done for licensed people.
Yeah.
Did a lot. You wrote a lot for Valiant. You've written a lot for DC.
Yeah.
How do you develop creator-owned stories that are your stories as opposed to working with unlicensed books?
Yeah, like I say, it's two different kind of muscles, right? Two different kind of creative muscles. I did. So I went through the whole process with the surrogates, and it was great and everything like that. But even during all of that, I never stopped my job working in the warehouse. I went to the premiere with my wife in Los Angeles on whatever it was, a Thursday or something. I don't remember. And on Monday, I was back in Top Shelf's warehouse packing boxes because, excuse me, I've got a family and there's responsibilities and things like that, and I didn't want to make the mistake of, that's it, I did it, and now I'm just going to go make my living as a writer now. And, you end up taking gigs that you don't really want to do because you got to keep the lights on, so.
Right. Uh, everybody knows that theoretically. But when you get down into it, particularly if you have, children or mortgage or children and a mortgage,
Yeah.
that will change your life real fast, real fast. And you understand the difference between responsibility and creative fulfillment. Responsibility.
Yeah, I don't know that everybody does, but I certainly did. I come from a very blue collar.
I agree.
Yeah, I come from a very blue collar family, and to me, it's always been a job. Like it's creative, and I'm blessed to do what I do, but it's a job, and you have to run it like a business, and you have to make sure that you're, paying your bills and doing what you need to do. I didn't stop working in the warehouse and become a full-time writer until I started on Green Lantern, and so that was
Really.
Yeah, the whole time I was at Valiant, I was still working in the warehouse. I was writing Demon Knights
and stuff,
X-Men of War, and all that. I'm still working in the warehouse.
Weren't you doing the Rick Riordan stuff by then? Before that, or was that after?
Yeah, I was doing the Rick Riordan stuff before then. Yep, that was actually what I did first after Surrogates.
Right.
I was in New York City at New York Comic Con back when it used to be in February, and I was there to. They were going to make the big announcement about Surrogates and start promoting it at that convention because it came out in September that year. And I was at that show for that when I met the editor who was looking to do Rick Riordan graphic novels and started doing those. So, but yeah, I kept my job at Top Shelf all that time to make sure that my responsibilities were always taken care of. So,
Absolutely.
to answer the question, to do both for me, like DC, I had done the film thing with done Surrogates and been made to a film or anything like that. And there are certainly those Walking Dead type scenarios where, it's the golden parachute, you know what I mean? But This was not that. It was not some amount of money that I was going to live the rest of my life on. So to me, the stability, again, looking at it as a job, the stability of a monthly comic book, and that every month I've got to do an issue and the issue is going to come out, you start to get, and of course the rug can get pulled out from you at any time, but you certainly start to get a little bit more of a stability in terms of a regular paycheck than you do doing creator-owned things and miniseries and whatnot, right? And so that was the attraction for me to do X-Men of War and Green Lantern, and then you get to the point where you're doing, Green Lantern and Flash and X-Men of War all at the same time. Well, now you've almost got a weekly paycheck coming in because you're doing a comic book every week, and so that was why I made that switch consciously. A lot of people ask me that because I did the creator-owned thing and it got made into a movie. And why didn't you just keep doing that? Well, you can't make that happen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
To go in thinking that's going to happen every time, this is not the way it's going to be.
If you happen to be in New York City and you happen to be at a convention of young actors, people who want to wind up on stage and then maybe make it into the movies and stuff, just ask that convention. So how many of you folks have waited tables?
Yeah.
And damn near everybody's hand is going to go straight up, because that's what it takes to become an actor, particularly a Broadway actor, because there aren't a lot of jobs. Same thing with comics. Comics is show business. And you have to take care of yourself and your family first. Having said that, I'll shut up now.
No, that's always the way I approached it. I think a lot of people get in trouble because they don't do that, and they think that I've got like random some miniseries that they're doing that's going to be 5 issues, and that's it. I made it now, and I think you can end up in some really bad spots. From the beginning, I was always focused on paying my bills, making sure I was putting money away for retirement, doing all those kinds of things. Again, being part of a blue collar family, and
I mean, you've been
absolutely. I'm sorry to jump on top of you, Bob, but that's what I do.
That's
I grew up in a working class family, very much so. A small family. I had a sister and two parents, and an apartment on the third floor in Chicago. And I do not believe in the work ethic per se. I believe in responsibility. Now, we can't always meet that. We try to be responsible. And if you try in earnest, that's fine. But you have to remember that we're living creatures who have commitments.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been, like I said, you've been doing this 20 years now, and you've been incredibly prolific, and I expect probably another 20 years to go, where this is, and I think this is kind of going to lead into one of the other questions I have, but there's no harm or shame in the choices that you made in working for the thing, because you have done some amazing things with licensed products, and you've also, at the same time, been able to do, and that's kind of where this question comes from, like you've done a lot of creator-owned stuff, and had the ability to do that, and so those things are definitely, like you mentioned, different muscles, like the things that you do in for DC, or you did for DC, or for Valiant. Like I had a question, and that question was, were you ever told no for something you wanted to do on a licensed product?
No.
Like I'm working on Green Lantern, and I have
like you said, I want to do this
all the time. Yeah, all the time. Because
is there something you wish that you hadn't been told no? Listen, nobody works there anymore that works there.
I'm trying to think. I mean, to me, yeah, it happens all the time. You got to go into it knowing that you don't own these characters, and you don't own the universe. And so there were things I wanted to do, like when I got greenlit to launch the Hawkman series. After my pitch had already been approved, I was told that I couldn't use Hawkwoman or Hawkgirl in a brand new Hawkman series, because they were being used elsewhere in Justice League or something like that. And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like that's the entire supporting cast. What do you mean I can't use Hawkwoman?" And so, to me, those are part of the constraints. You have you have those things thrown at you, and you have to be able to react quickly to them. And I think one thing, everybody has things they're good at and things they're bad at. Especially in a creative endeavor, Something that I think is a strength of mine is I think I'm a very good puzzle piece writer. And by that, I mean, you can dump anything on my desk, any set of puzzle pieces, and I am going to figure out a way to make a story out of it. Whatever the crossover is, however short, I've had that call where it was like, you were going to do this, you can't do it anymore. You have to come up with a new story. And I'm like, by when? And they're like, the end of this phone call, like, I think it's just the way my brain works. I'm kind of a very detail-oriented, organized person, and just always have been. And so that's a skill set that's extremely valuable if you're going to work in Marvel or DC or something like that, where you have 50 different comic books that are all moving parts, and anything can happen at any time. It's going to change something. And it's new puzzle pieces get dumped on your desk, and you got a way to make them fit. There's never been a puzzle that I haven't been able to make fit. Knock on wood. It'll happen someday, but it hasn't happened yet. And that doesn't mean they're always as successful as you want them to be. And there's things that I wish had gone differently. Hawkman will be a great example. Like I had sort of a plan for what I was going to do for Hawkman post issue 13, and because of things happening elsewhere in the universe, Hawkman was one of two characters that got caught up in Villains United and then an Infected storyline. So I had to do back-to-back crossovers right in the middle of everything. But even then, I found a way to make the puzzle pieces work, and the goal is that the reader doesn't see the cracks, even if behind the scenes I know what was going to happen and what had to change to present it in such a way that it doesn't feel that way to the reader.
Well, your ability to do that is what I like most about your work on Hawkman, on those first 13. Because by the time you got Hawkman, the continuity was so mixed up, not necessarily always contradictory, just mixed up. It was like string theory. It's like unraveling string theory.
Wait,
and you did that.
Yeah. You have some responsibility for that string theory.
Yeah, I do. What's your point?
Okay, all right.
I mean, everybody. Look, Jerry Bales, whose memory I continue to worship, was pissed off at DC for making Hawkman a character different from the Golden Age version. Now, Jerry was like 10 years older than me, so I get that. That's what he grew up with, and that's what he's most comfortable with. It was also one of his favorite characters. So I totally understand that. There was a man, who was livid when John Byrne took over Superman and would go to every convention he could in the New York area, to bitch at whoever was at DC. And finally, what I told him, and I like the guy, I understand where he was coming from, I said, look, every generation has a right to their own Superman, to a Superman that makes sense to them. Mm-hmm. And the Superman of the 1960s or 50s or 40s, this isn't those days. This is a whole different world than that world was. And what's amusing is that my daughter, when she went to see the fourth Star Wars movie, I was making a joke about it, just because I make a joke about ants crawling across the table. And she said, no, my generation has a right to our own Star Wars.
Yeah, but that's a terrible movie.
And I agreed with her on that. I absolutely agreed with her, partially because I'd already made that argument about Superman. Next day, I asked her if she liked the movie, and for a while, she just didn't want to talk to me.
So Hawkman is a great example of the puzzle piece thing, and that was what appealed to me about it. When they asked me if I wanted to pitch for Hawkman, I didn't know anything about Hawkman. Didn't read comics growing up, like I said. I never know anything about any of the characters that DC would ask me to pitch for. When they asked me to pitch for Green Lantern, I said, I don't know anything about him, but I guess he's green and sounds like he's got a lantern. And they were like, no, it's a ring, but yeah, whatever. Like, I didn't know anything. I knew nothing. But I knew that Hawkman was generally regarded as the most confusing, mixed up character in comics. And so that really appealed to me, because this is the ultimate puzzle. And if I could somehow come in and figure out a way to make sense of it, then maybe that will be something that will be remembered, which is hard to do because these characters have been around, getting on close to 100 years, and they've had so many defining runs that it's kind of hard. I'm never going to remember it, I don't think, for Green Lantern, because Jeff Johns and Denny O'Neil and Ron Mars and so many people got there before me, right? But there's an opportunity on Hawkman, even though there's been great Hawkman runs, that if I could come in and be somebody who makes sense of it, then if Brian and I can make sense of it, then we'll be remembered for that. And that was the appeal to me. That's why I wanted to do it.
Yeah, there were at least a half dozen different versions of Hawkman. They were all related, retroactively or progressively. And there were quite a few after the run that I did with Tim Truman and John Ostrander. But it was a mess. And DC had that problem anyway, because they kept on rebooting their entire universe.
See, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of it. I'd never read a Hawkman comic in my life. And so I sat down literally and went on Wikipedia and started reading about Hawkman on Wikipedia. And very immediately I was like, oh, I get it. The ancient Egyptian archaeologist and the space cop are the same guy. They just reincarnate across time and space, and it's the same Hawkman. And like that never happened. And so I was like, well, I guess that's my idea then. That's how I'm going to make sense of all of it. They're all just past lives of the same person. And the reason why it's so confusing is because he himself didn't know that until this story you're reading right now. He's discovering it as you, the reader, are discovering it. And that's why he never understood his own life. And that's why his stories are so confusing, because in his own autobiography, he is an unreliable narrator, And so that was kind of where the whole genesis of that came from. And the way that I always say it to people is you can't fake stupid. You know, like if I had spent my entire life reading comic books and knew everything there was to know about Hawkman, I don't think I would have thought of that. The only reason I come up with the story ideas that I come up with for Green Lantern or Hawkman or Superman 78 or whatever is because I don't know anything about those characters. And that's the one thing that I think I can bring as a writer that nobody else can bring. Because if I had read all those comics, I couldn't act like I didn't read them. You can't fake stupid.
That would make for a great business card. You know, you just write down your motto. You know, it's like, yeah, I don't know shit about this. Give me the job.
Yeah,
it's great.
I think it works, and I think it goes back to like sort of a principle I've always tried to uphold as a writer, even when I was writing fiction. I never wanted to write about something that I'd already made up my mind about, because then you just become somebody who's telling your audience. Your characters are talking to the audience and not talking to each other, and you're expressing all these things, right? And so I'd have nothing against people putting opinions in writing, but from my point of view, that's what essays are for. And I love essays, you know, I love reading editorials, but that's not what I want to write when I write fiction. So when I wrote Surrogates, I was talking about themes and topics that I didn't know if technology is good or bad or what. I didn't know these faith questions and things. And so stuff that I didn't know the answer to. And if there was a comic where somebody came along and it, for whatever reason, it had been the thing that I'd read my entire life, and they asked me if I wanted to write it, I would say no, because I already know what I think about that thing. I want to write about things that I don't know what I think about, because then I will be on that journey and the reader will be surprised by what's discovered. They would have to be, because I'm surprised myself, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Have you gotten a call from Russell T Davies yet?
I don't know who that is. Who's that?
He's the showrunner and producer and recreator of Doctor Who, because what you found in Hawkman, such a wonderful job developing, is essentially along the same lines as Doctor Who.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about it.
Definitely do Doctor Who then.
I remember being a kid, and I remember one of my cousins. I'm the youngest of all my generation in the family. My oldest cousin, I remember, I didn't know it was Doctor Who, but later on in life, I saw the guy with the scarf, and I was like, my cousin used to watch that guy, you know. But that's all I know about Doctor Who. I don't know anything about Doctor Who. Yeah.
He's like,
did I steal it from Doctor Who? I would imagine Brian Hitch would have said something, because he's a huge Doctor Who guy. He did some of the he did some of the set designs for the I can't remember which Doctor.
I know you're
one of the more recent ones. He designed some of the sets and costumes, I think, and things on paper. You know? I know he's a big Doctor Who guy. So
it might have been Christopher Eccleston.
It might have been, yeah. And so I would imagine he would have been like, "Hey, man, this is just Doctor Who," but he never said that. So I don't know. Yeah.
It's our brethren overseas in England that turned me into a fan of Doctor Who, and that was in the 70s, in the mid 70s, when it was really cheap. I mean, they had like $7-8 budgets, and every penny was on the screen.
I think you sell yourself a little short on that, because I get the not knowing, but you have got to be one of the most avid researchers in terms of what you do, because you take characters that you did not grow up reading, you don't have the decades of knowledge about, and then you go and find their supporting characters and all of the things and bring those in ways that are respectful to what came before. I mean, is that something you take a lot of effort in?
I do, yeah. And that, to me, that's all part of the puzzle, you know. But I don't do that for my initial pitch. That's a lot of work, and I don't even know if I've got the job. So when they want to pitch Green Lantern or Hawkman or whatever, or Exo-Man of War, I get a very basic character summary, and then I think about what I would do with that. If that gets approved, then I'll go read every issue of Exo-Man of War. I'll go read every issue of Hawkman, which wasn't easy, because most of that stuff wasn't in trade. I had to collect those things.
Well, they have it at the library. You could have gone to
some of the older stuff, no. And they did have like the black and white editions that DC had done, you know. But I wanted the color ones, because I wanted to know what these characters looked like in color, so that if I was writing scenes, I would know what their costumes looked like and where I wanted to put them and things in the background and whatnot, So I had to go basically build everything except the Zatanna issue of a Silver Age run of Hawkman, so I could read them in print. Green Lantern, you're not going to do that. There's thousands and thousands of Green Lantern comics, but I did read, I think, 300 Green Lantern comics before I started writing it. So I do all that research after the pitch is approved, so I can see how I can start building that puzzle and pulling these threads, and how can I use the Atom, and then how can I use other characters in the DCU that would apply to Hawkman that haven't been used before, like Madame Xanadu, or it was interesting to me that the Shade had a cane with a bird head on it, and I was like, well, what if there's a connection between the Shade and Hawkman? And so you just start pulling these other things in.
Yeah, that's cool. I really have a soft spot in my heart for any writer who wants to take on the X-Men, because they're going to spend the next 2 years doing nothing but reading X-Men comics.
The one that I get after Hawkman is people have asked me if I would write Donna Troy. And then asked me if
I would love for you to write Donna Troy, because you can fix that. Because
they asked me about Moon Knight too, because I guess Moon Knight is confusing. I guess.
Are you familiar? Like, people say that. Do you know why people say that about Donna Troy?
I don't know anything about Donna Troy except she was in Teen Titans. I know what she looks like, and I read some of that Teen Titans run. The famous Wolfman Perez run.
Right.
DC would send me omnibuses and things, but I don't know why she's confusing. She's not confusing in that run,
So what's interesting is in that run is where it starts to make sense, because part of the problem is, so it's Marv's fault. It's all Marv's fault.
By the way, today is Marv's birthday, so be
birthday,
cool about
Marv.
what you say.
Happy birthday, Marv.
Okay. Marv wrote my very favorite single issue of comics ever, which is New Teen Titans number 38, which is Who is Donna Troy? And the concept is so way back when the Teen Titans were created, there were 3 sidekicks, and then they're like, oh, well, we need a girl, because we didn't want, whatever. So they threw Wonder Girl at it. And where did Wonder Girl come from? She didn't show up until Teen Titans in the 60s. So they're like, oh, well, she was there was some little backstory that she was adopted by Wonder Woman and taken to Paradise Island, raised there, and she ended up in Man's World, right? So Marv explored that event, right? So where did Donna Troy come from, and how did she go there? Then there was a Crisis on Infinite Earths, and Wonder Woman's origin was completely changed, and how her coming into into off of Paradise Island happened, and there was no room for where Wonder Girl had come from. So then they had to recreate a new backstory for her, which now she was descended from the original. She was adopted, but it was the original Titans of Myth who had taken her. And then John Byrne got a hold of her, and she was really a split clone of Diana that was split off, and only Wally could fix that. And then there was a whole Titans. It's complicated.
Sounds like a mess.
But yeah, again, she's one of my favorite characters.
But you can find many people, who will fight to the death for their version, for their favorite version of any of these characters.
Yeah, and that was also a part of the Hawkman thing too, because having written Green Lantern for as long as I did, 87 issues or something like that, it's a very fractured fan base,
Sure.
Yes.
The Hal fans hate the Kyle fans, and everybody hates the Guy fans, and it's like, it's just a big mess. And so I very consciously didn't want to go into Hawkman in choosing whether it was this Hawkman or that Hawkman or whatever. I wanted it to be, no matter which Hawkman is your Hawkman, this is your Hawkman,
Right.
So that the fan base could be unified and all that kind of stuff. And we were very fortunate that it worked out. I remember when the first issue came out, we were making our big swing, and it's either people are going to love it or they're going to hate it. You don't know until the day it comes out and people read it. But the response, even to this day, was almost universally happy about it. Even people who didn't like me as a writer and hated everything that I did, they like that one, you know. So like Brian and Brian and I talk once in a while, and like it was just such a great time us working together on that book, and we just really felt like we were clicking, and it was just one of those collaborative relationships. It was so much fun, and then to have that, but then to also see the audience enjoying it and being so positive about it too, was a really nice feeling.
My wife was my late wife was a huge Green Lantern fan. Her favorite character by far, just astonishing. Guy Gardner was her favorite Green Lantern.
I love Guy.
But yeah. But she was not really involved in Green Lantern fandom, but fans would meet or whatever, cross over in one way or another. That's how she became friendly with Rachel Maddow. Because Rachel Maddow was I know. Look at that. Bob just
This is that is, you see that face? That happens every show. Once for some reason, something comes out of his mouth. Wait, go ahead, Rachel Maddow. Go ahead.
Was a big Green Lantern fan. I mean, today she's like too deep into research about everything to do that. But back then, she had her radio shows before MSNBC, and I liked her radio show. Linda loved her radio show. And one day she's talking about Green Lantern. Linda just sort of bobs into my office and says, she's talking about Green Lantern. So I'm listening, and it's really cool. So somehow they sort of got involved. And every once in a while, you need a humbling experience. But Rachel Maddow's Green Lantern was a younger Green Lantern than my wife's was, which was a younger Green Lantern than the original dude. So if you're going to do all of this, as you say, for close to 100 years, in this case, like damn close, 85 years, you're going to need to do some heavy operating in order to stitch all that stuff together.
Yeah.
We're getting close to out of time, but so I want to come back to Bad Idea for a second. And there's one story I kind of want. I want, like, there's this thing that my understanding is that Hank Howard Pizza Detective, this is like the collected edition of it. This was the Kickstarter, but this is like a bunch of shorts that like wove through some stuff. Tell me about this character a little bit.
It's one of those things about Bad Idea that I really love about them. Like
David Lapham, right? Okay.
Yeah, David Lapham. Yep. I woke up one Saturday and had this idea for a story about a pizza detective. I worked in pizza shops when I was growing up. Most of my jobs growing up were in restaurants, and so I had this idea for like a noir detective who, inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart, I wanted to do an unreliable narrator. And so he's completely serious about his job. Pizza crime is the most serious thing in the world. There's nothing that he thinks is absurd, but everyone around him knows that he's completely absurd, But he doesn't know that they know he's absurd. He's got the cigarette and the fedora and the trench coat, and he's trying to bust some kid that's stealing tokens out of the game machine at the pizza parlor and selling them at another arcade, and he's treating it like it's a counterfeiting scheme or whatever, And so I had this idea to do an 8-page story with it, and I sent it to Bad Idea, and I said, this is an 8-page story about a pizza detective that you didn't ask for. You probably don't want it. Give it a read, see what you think. And they loved it, and they were the ones who went and got David Lapham. And when they told me that, you got to be kidding me. Like, you put David Lapham on this? And so then it became an entirely different thing. When I saw what Dave did with the first story, now I was like, I'd really like to do a lot more of these. And so they started off as 8-pagers, but that collected edition has 250 pages about a pizza detective in it. And some of them are 64-page stories, and some of them are 32 pages. Some of them are still 8 pages. And he just, goes off on all these adventures, and he always ends up being right. He always gets his man. He always solves the crime. And but it's always just kind of absurd, and nobody really understands why he cares so much about pizza, which is actually one of the stories where you find out why he cares so much about pizza. But
well, I have not read it, but I guarantee you, by the end of this weekend, I will have a copy and I will have started it.
I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of it.
There is no way you can get me to not read that. If there was like 3 copies left and I had to hire Indiana Jones to get one of them, I would.
The thing is, too, like a lot of the crimes he comes up against are things that I actually saw when I worked at a Chuck E. Cheese. And so, like, actual things that I remember from when I was there. And they get more absurd as they go along. Like, one of the big 2-parters, there's a guy who's always late on his deliveries. And so Hank is investigating this to figure out why the guy's always late. Turns out he's using his delivery route to deliver drugs, and he works for the Australian mafia. And he ends up unraveling this entire thing where they're using Outback steakhouses to traffic drugs all over the country, and nobody believes him, but he ends up cracking the case. And so it's all dead serious, though. None of it is done for like a cheap laugh. Like, he never cracks a smile, and he's the hardest character to write because all of his dialogue is completely nonsensical, but also makes perfect sense. So, for example, he'll say things like, "It takes 2 not to tango, and I just put on my dancing shoes." Like, it doesn't take
there
two
you
not
go.
to tango. It only takes 1 person not to tango. That statement makes no sense, but it also makes complete sense when you think about it, And so every line he says has to be like some kind of switched up thing that sounds familiar, but like, goodbyes are for greeting cards. Like, that doesn't make any sense, but it also makes perfect sense, And so, like, I have to think about it a lot, and I have to get myself in like a separate space when I write those stories. And so that's kind of why I'm proud of them. The challenge.
Wait a minute. Just a minute. You worked at Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
Okay. My respect for you, which has been very, very strong, has just gone up. You've endured that.
Yeah.
My attitude about Chuck E. Cheese is you can't get me inside one of those places at gunpoint. But if for some reason I had to go in, because it's not meant for me. No. If I had to go in and I don't like the experience, it's my fault. Because they're not for me. They're for the kids who are there.
Yeah, yeah. I worked in the kitchen. I was never on the floor. They tried to get me to be the mouse one night because the guy who was the mouse called out sick, and I was like, I will walk before I get in that mouse.
No.
So I'm not doing it. And I had worked in restaurants many times before that, chicken wing place, Italian restaurant, Subway, all kinds of things. So like, I was their best kitchen guy, which, I'm a senior in high school, but I was like, man, I'm not getting in that mouse costume. And they're like, cool, man, you can go back to the line, do whatever, So I was kitchen only. I didn't deal with up front too much. I wouldn't have, but there was a guy there who got caught stealing tokens out of the safe and was selling them at Hollywood Grand Prix, which was a large arcade that had a racetrack and whatever. And he was selling the tokens there. So if you wanted to get $20 worth of tokens out of the token machine from Grand Prix, he figured out the tokens were the same size and they would both work. He would sell you $20 worth of tokens from Chuck E. Cheese for $10. And so he was flipping stolen tokens at the thing. And so that's one of the stories that Hank has to investigate, And I worked at Grand Prix too. I was another one of the jobs that I had when I was in high school. So yeah, all drawn.
Have you ever met Barbara Kiesel, writer, editor?
Have not. No, I know
wonderful
who Barbara is, but haven't.
Right, wonderful person, wonderful writer, wonderful editor. She and I went to the Toy Fair show, to the toy building in Manhattan. This is like 30 years ago, to talk to a bunch of people. And as we were waiting to get in past the hordes, she and I were having a conversation on the street on Broadway, and I just did one of these. I went like that. I didn't touch her. I said, like, look behind you. And she turned around, and there was a 6-foot Woody Woodpecker staring her right in the face, nose to nose.
Yeah.
And Barbara did not faint, but she swooned. Not in a good way, like, she fell in love with Woody Woodpecker. No. It's like, get this away from me. which was totally understandable. So you're not wanting to get inside the mouse?
Yeah.
I gotta jump in on this. So my wife Sherry, who's a loyal watcher of the show, wanted to be the mouse at Chuck E. Cheese, and they would not let her because she was too tall.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, our guy's name was Darren. And like I watched Darren shrink in like real time. Like I went to high school with him. And like Darren, the size Darren was when he started as the mouse to the size he was by the time he left, like he lost so much weight.
Yes, yes, you do.
Florida. Imagine you're the mouse in South Florida. Like that's just
Sure.
That's inhuman, you know. Yeah.
No, I can't imagine being the mouse in Nome, Alaska. No.
Well, we're just about out of time, and I want to remind everybody that Planet Death comes out in July. I think we're close to FOC, or we're at it, or somewhere near there.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. Yeah,
it's it's going to be at your local comic shop. You're going to be able to get it there, so make sure that they know that you want it.
It's in color.
It is in color.
Yep.
I've read, issue 0 you can get probably now. I've already read issue 0. It's fantastic. It's looks to be a really fun ride, and there's a bunch of other Bad Idea stuff you have coming out this year. Are you going to be at any shows people can find you at?
I will be, so far the back half of this year, I will be at San Diego. I will be at Baltimore.
Nice.
And there's one other one. I can't remember what it is. But yeah, I've got at least 3, and I might end up adding a few more. I've got some store signings I'll be doing when Planet Death #1 comes out, and when Ordained comes out. I'll be doing some store signings and things, so I'll be around. Yeah.
Great. Well, I will see you, as will Bob, in Baltimore, I believe.
Yes,
but Bob will see you in San Diego first.
I will be. This will be my first San Diego this year.
Oh, no way! Wow.
Yeah.
I'll find you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob, for being here. This was so much fun. We're gonna do it again. There's plenty to talk about coming in the future. So we'll have you on whenever you want.
I appreciate y'all having me on. It was great talking to you,
Robert. I love talking with you, and I really appreciate you doing the show. I am so certain that all of those out there in Etherland feel the same way. It's just great stories.
I appreciate
Chuck E. Cheese, my God.
This show has gone the gamut. Like I can't even list the things we've touched on tonight. So thanks for being here, Rob. And
appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Thank you. That was great.
That was super fun.
That was great fun.
Yeah. Wow. I don't even know. I don't even know what we've touched on tonight. Thank you guys, everybody, for being here, for listening to us. Next week on Tuesday, because it's going to be a Tuesday, we will be here, and Dave Chisholm is going to join us. Comic book writer and artist. He's currently has Plague House out. He won Ringo Awards and maybe something else, definitely awards last year for his Miles Davis book. He also did a book called Spectrum. He's going to be on. He's excited to be here. I'm excited to have him here next Tuesday, the 20th. And it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you all, as always, for being here with us and for putting up with our nonsense. Well, with my nonsense. Bob tries to put the brake on it, but my nonsense. Thank you.
This was a lot of great fun. Thanks everybody for being here. We will see you next Tuesday. If you're watching this not on Tuesday and you're rewatching, that's great. Thank you for doing that. Make sure you subscribe, follow, and like, so that you know when we're out there, because we will be there every Tuesday for you. Thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you later.
See ya.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?